Sylvia Plath, born on October 27, 1932 in Boston, Massachusetts, was an American poet, novelist and short story writer who left an indelible mark on modern literature. Known for her confessional style and hauntingly intense language, Plath's work often explored themes of identity, depression, and death. Her most famous works, including her poetry collection, Ariel, and her novel The Bell Jar, reveal a deeply personal and tragic life. Despite her brief career and early death at the age of 30, Plath's legacy endures as a powerful voice in poetry and literature. Sylvia Plath's early life was marked by both privilege and tragedy. Her father, Otto Plath, was a professor of entomology and a specialist on bees. Her mother, Ariel Plath, was a second-generation American of Austrian descent. Plath was an ambitious and gifted student, excelling in academics and winning awards for her writing from a young age. However, her father's death when she was just 8 years old had a profound impact on her, a loss that would resonate throughout her life and in her poetry. Plath's academic career was impressive. She attended Smith College on a scholarship, where she continued to excel as both a student and a writer. During this time, she published several short stories and poems in national magazines. Despite her outward success, Plath struggled with severe depression. In 1953, during her junior year at Smith, she attempted suicide by taking an overdose of sleeping pills. This event, which she later fictionalized in The Bell Jar, led to her hospitalization and electroconvulsive therapy, but also marked a turning point in her life, heightening her awareness of the complexities of mental illness. The Bell Jar, a glimpse into her inner world. Plath's only novel, The Bell Jar, was published in 1963 under the pseudonym Victoria Lucas. The semi-autobiographical work offers an intimate portrayal of a young woman, Esther Greenwood, who navigates the pressures of society, the expectations placed upon women, and her own deepening depression. The novel's exploration of mental illness, gender roles, and societal expectations resonates with readers, offering insight into Plath's personal struggles and her critique of the 1950s American society she lived in. The Bell Jar depicts Esther's descent into depression with stark, vivid imagery. The Bell Jar symbolises the suffocating and isolating effect of mental illness, a recurring motif that Plath uses to express the feeling of being trapped within one's own mind. The novel's critical tone toward the rigid expectations placed upon women, particularly the pressure to conform to traditional roles as wives and mothers, reflected Plath's own dissatisfaction with the societal norms of her time. Despite being published with some hesitation, the novel was a critical success, though it only gained widespread recognition and acclaim after her death. In 1955, Sylvia Plath received a Fulbright scholarship to study at the University of Cambridge in England, where she met fellow poet Ted Hughes. The two shared a passionate and tumultuous relationship, quickly marrying in 1956. Plath's marriage to Hughes was both a source of inspiration and, eventually, emotional turmoil. The couple initially supported each other's literary ambitions, with Hughes becoming a major influence on Plath's work. The two poets lived in the United States for a time before settling in England. During their marriage, Plath and Hughes collaborated artistically, and Plath published her first collection of poetry, The Colossus, in 1960. This collection revealed her talent for combining mythological and autobiographical themes with precision and intensity. Despite the success of The Colossus, Plath's marriage to Hughes began to deteriorate, partly due to Hughes's infidelities and Plath's deepening depression. The collapse of their marriage in 1962 had a profound effect on Plath, and she channeled her emotions into her writing. The period following their separation was one of the most creatively prolific of her life. During this time, she wrote many of the poems that would later form the Ariel collection, some of her most iconic and powerful work. Plath's Ariel poems are regarded as some of the most significant contributions to the confessional poetry movement, a genre that emerged in the mid-20th century, characterized by its focus on personal and autobiographical subject matter. These poems, which she wrote in the final months of her life, are known for their vivid imagery, emotional intensity, and exploration of themes like despair, anger, and self-identity. They display an unflinching honesty and directness, offering insight into her psyche. Poems like Daddy and Lady Lazarus are among her most famous. In Daddy, Plath combines the personal and the political, using the figure of her father as a symbol of patriarchal authority and oppression. The poem's intense, almost violent tone reveals her complex relationship with her father, as well as her struggle against the constraints imposed on her as a woman and a writer. Lady Lazarus, another iconic poem from the Ariel collection, draws on the biblical story of Lazarus to depict a woman who repeatedly rises from the dead. It serves as a metaphor for survival, resilience, and ultimately defiance in the face of death and societal expectations. These poems highlight Plath's skill in blending myth, history, and personal experience, creating a body of work that is both universal and deeply intimate. Motherhood was another theme that Sylvia Plath frequently explored in her work. She had 2 children with Ted Hughes, Frida, born in 1960, and Nicholas, born in 1961. Plath's ambivalence about motherhood is evident in her writing. On one hand, she expressed love and dedication to her children. On the other hand, she grappled with the tension between her identity as a mother and her identity as an artist. In poems like Morning Song, she explores the joy and alienation of new motherhood, describing the experience in both tender and detached terms. The competing demands of creativity and domestic responsibility often left Plath feeling torn, contributing to her sense of isolation. This conflict between societal expectations and personal ambition is a recurring theme in her work, reflecting her struggle to reconcile the 2 roles. In the winter of 1962 to 1963, Plath moved to London with her children, renting a flat previously occupied by poet W.B. Yeats, an arrangement that she found symbolically meaningful. Despite her difficult personal circumstances, she continued to write prolifically, producing some of her most powerful poems during this time. However, Plath's mental state continued to decline. She struggled with depression and the responsibilities of single motherhood, compounded by a harsh winter that isolated her further. On February 11, 1963, Plath died by suicide. She was 30 years old. Her death marked the end of a brief but brilliant career, and her work gained widespread recognition posthumously. After her death, Ted Hughes took control of Plath's literary estate, editing and publishing her work, including the posthumous Ariel collection in 1965. While the collection was an immediate critical success, Hughes's role in curating Plath's legacy has been controversial. He omitted certain poems and restructured the order of the collection, decisions that have been debated by critics and scholars seeking to understand Plath's intentions. Sylvia Plath's influence on literature is immeasurable. She is often considered a central figure in confessional poetry, alongside poets like Anne Sexton and Robert Lowell. Her work paved the way for a more personal, raw approach to poetry, exploring taboo subjects like mental illness, death, and the complexities of womanhood. Her ability to transform her personal pain into art has made her a literary icon and a symbol of resilience for many. The Bell Jar remains a classic, often read as a coming-of-age story that speaks to the struggles of mental illness and the pressures faced by women. It has inspired countless readers and writers, particularly those exploring themes of depression and societal expectations. The novel's protagonist, Esther Greenwood, has become an emblem of resistance against the restrictive norms of her time. Plath's poetry collections, including Ariel, The Colossus, and Crossing the Water continue to be widely studied and celebrated for their emotional intensity and poetic innovation. Her use of vivid imagery, symbolic language, and mythological references set her apart as a poet with a unique voice and vision. While Plath's work has been widely celebrated, her legacy is also fraught with controversy. The control Ted Hughes exercised over her estate and her posthumous publications has led to debates about the authenticity of her edited works. Some critics argue that Hughes's decisions altered the intended impact of her final poems, while others believe that his efforts brought much-needed attention to her work. Feminist scholars have also examined Plath's life and work through the lens of gender, exploring how societal constraints and the expectations placed on women influenced her writing and personal struggles. Plath's experiences with the conflicting roles of artist, wife, and mother highlight the challenges faced by many women of her time, and her work remains relevant in discussions about gender equality and mental health. Sylvia Plath's life and work offer a powerful testament to the intersection of art, mental illness, and societal expectations. Her poetry and prose continue to resonate with readers for their emotional depth and stark honesty. Despite her tragic death, Plath's influence on literature remains.